Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought and Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight, I figured we would all dive into some Thanksgiving leftovers and have ourselves a treat. So, sit back, work up an appetite, and get ready for a little story that I like to call Tommy's Lunches. Tommy was a childhood friend of mine. We'd play at recess, sit together at lunch, and frequent each other's house after school, parental rides dependent. Tommy was a great kid. He didn't get into trouble, was fairly sociable. I mean, he was acquainted with many of our peers and seemed to have no difficulty fitting in. There never seemed to be anything wrong with him. The only odd thing about Tommy is that every Friday, he'd bring some oddly named meal for lunch, packed in his typical brown paper bag. Now, I don't mean he'd bring an asparagus casserole or pack a Brussels sprout sandwich. It wasn't that kind of weird. The meals, usually sandwiches, were always wrapped in a small plastic baggie, and written on it in black marker was written a name. One Friday, it would say Mary. Another, it might say Stephen. Almost as if the sandwich had belonged to someone else before it had been placed in his bag by his mother. At first, I thought maybe Tommy had been taking his siblings' lunches the night before each Friday, but that presumption was quickly found to be untrue when I discovered that Tommy was an only child. So, then I figured maybe it was some kind of joke between him and his mom. But as the weeks progressed, I noticed no pattern, no observable reasoning behind the names. I had to ask him, "Hey man, what do you got there?" Tommy looked down at his sandwich, holding it with two hands and having a couple of bites already bitten off. This is a Melissa and mustard." Tommy laughed, after he had finished swallowing. "That's what I've been wanting to ask you about, man. Why do your lunches have weird names written on the sandwiches every Friday?" Tommy began laughing at me again. "I know, it's a little odd, right? It's just something my mom used to do for me as a kid, and it kinda stuck." "You don't think that's a little weird?" I asked him. "Well, I guess if I was you it would be, but it's something that I grew up with. Mom says I was a fussy eater, and when she would name my food funny things, I would laugh and apparently be more prone to eating it. I guess it just kind of stuck," Tommy explained. At the time, that provision of information was enough for me. I mean, I was young at the time, and Tommy's explanation seemed perfectly rational. I really didn't think anything of it after that for a long time. It wasn't until that one night at Tommy's house that I began to question what he had said his mother had told him. It was months after I had inquired to Tommy about the odd nature of his lunches. I had found myself over at Tommy's house and playing in his backyard. The days had grown long, and the sun was still shining brightly in the sky, even though it had grown late into the afternoon. I can't for the life of me recall exactly what we were doing that day, but I know it ended when his mother called us inside to wash our hands and prepare for dinner. I followed my friend in through the swinging screen door and into the dining room. The table was set with 4 plates, with accompanying cups and silverware. The head of the table was reserved for Tommy's dad, who was currently sitting in his armchair in the adjacent living room watching the evening news. Tommy's dad never really talked much. Again, there was nothing observably wrong with him, or Tommy's mother either for that matter. I always figured Tommy's dad was just quiet. Tommy's mom was much more outgoing, but she was always really nice, or seemed that way. Amongst the plates, cups, and silverware sat the dinner itself: roast pork, mashed potatoes, and broccoli. I stood there for a moment, waiting for a wiggling Tommy to finish his conversation with his mother and move out of the way, so I could get past him and to the bathroom to wash my dirty hands, when I easily overheard him ask his mother if they had any more lemon juice for his broccoli, and her replying to him by informing him that there was likely some in the basement in the secondary fridge. To some of you, that might seem a bit odd, but I honestly grew up knowing at least 4 other people whose parents bought in bulk and kept a reserve refrigerator. Tommy, doing the pee dance while talking to his mom, ended his conversation with a sprint to the bathroom before slamming the door behind him. His mother went into the kitchen right after, presumably to gather the few remaining items to be placed on the table. So, I took it upon myself to go and fetch the lemon juice from the basement for her. The bathroom was occupied, she was busy, and I wasn't exactly a stranger in Tommy's house. Without a second thought, I walked back out of the dining room and stopped short of the stairs. Beneath the flight, covered with a wooden door, sat the stairs leading to the basement. I opened the door and walked through. The steps seemed to descend down into an inky, bottomless abyss. I immediately noticed the light switch, placed in an opportune location next to the door jamb, and flicked it upward. The space at the bottom of the stairs lit up with what seemed like daylight in an instant. The glow of the bulbs below highlighted a smooth, slate-gray cement floor, the only thing that I could see from the top of the stairs. I had never been in Tommy's basement before, but comforted by the shadow-chasing illumination, I felt no fear of venturing forward into the level below the house. The stairs were made of wood, but seemingly new, not making a squeak or sound of any kind, other than the sounds of my sneakers colliding with each subsequent step with a clunk. As I neared the base of the stairs, the air changed from a warm, summer thickness to be more cold and thin. Open, plain space at the bottom of the stairs, filled with random miscellaneous items, such as an old pool table, boxes and piles of what looked like old clothes. But that air reminded me of what air conditioning felt like. Something I rarely got to experience as a child. Halfway across the room, and pressing against the right-hand wall, sat what looked like 2 white refrigerators. I knew a few people with a spare fridge. Still do. But I don't know many who have 2. I puzzled for a moment, only a fraction of a second, before deciding to search both, if I had to, in order to retrieve the lemon juice that I had come to get. I headed for the one on the right first, as it was closest to me. I opened it up, a swinging metal clasp left to swing freely on its side, and noticed instantly what I had opened was not a refrigerator. It was just one giant freezer, or a deep freezer. I went to close the door, concluding that the other one must be the fridge, but then I caught note of something unusual, something that demanded I pay it further attention. The freezer, encompassed in an ice and leaking a cold fog, was packed full of large, clear plastic freezer bags, shelf to shelf, all full of some kind of red meat. What caught my attention, though, was that each package was labeled in the same odd way Tommy's Friday lunches were packed. I examined the names on the packages of meat. Eric, Susan, Dan, Teresa. It went on and on. A cold, nervous chill that paralyzed me with dread coursed its way up my spine. A terrible thought floated to the surface of my consciousness, pushing all others aside. People. Was Tommy being fed people? Bringing processed chunks and slices of human bodies to school to be eaten for lunch? How would Tommy explain this? I remembered thinking to myself that there was no logical reason for Tommy and his mother's inside joke to extend to the basement freezer. I decided I would act as if I hadn't seen anything, that I would confront Tommy later, away from the watchful eyes of his parents. I took a deep breath, did my best to steady my racing heart, and pushed the door closed. I opened the door next to it, and was presented with a normal-looking fridge with an unopened bottle of lemon juice sitting in the door's top shelf. I grabbed it, shut the door, turned around, almost dropping the bottle to the floor in shock. I took in a quick gasp of a breath for a yell, being startled, and forcibly held it back when I realized Tommy's mom had been standing right behind me. "Did you find it?" she asked. What do you mean?" I asked, trembling beneath my fundamentally transparent facade. "The lemon juice. You did come down here for the lemon juice, didn't you?" Tommy's mom clarified her initial question. I let out a sigh of relief, anticipating a much worse line of questioning, before I realized my obvious mistake of notable fear and attempted to resume my performance of ignorance. "Oh, yeah, no problem. I found it right away," I told her, hoping to insinuate a direct route to the fridge. Mrs. Stratton said nothing, and watched me with a slight smile as I walked past her and up towards the top of the steps. I had received pleasant smiles from the woman before, but this was less pleasant. There was something behind her smirk that turned my stomach. I felt her eyes upon me as I climbed the stairs. I refused to look back as I made my way into the living room and placed the bottle of sour fluid in the center of the table. I sat at the table next to Tommy, who was already piling up his plate. His father, already having taken his portions and done the same, was now seated at the head of the table. I looked past my cup, the bowl of peas, and over the mashed potatoes, and glared intently at the steaming pile of sliced roasted pork on the serving tray near the center. I remember wondering who it was that I had agreed to eat. I recalled all the past dinners I had experienced at Tommy's house. Chicken and spaghetti nights were likely harmless, being easily distinguishable from human flesh. But I also recalled the several occasions where I was served thick, fleshy meat with no bone or other feature that would have affirmed the title it had been given. Were all the pot roasts, hams, meatloafs, and other various courses I've had over the years here, in fact, cooked human? I retched at the thought, convinced I'd been duped and unknowingly participated in cannibalism. "Aren't you hungry, man?" Tommy asked me, noticing my distant, focused stare on the plattered, roasted flesh. "Oh, of course he is," Tommy's mom said, from behind me, giving me a shock. I swear to God that woman was a freaking ninja or something. Before I could answer for myself, Mrs. Stratton heaped 2 moderately sized cuts of roasted meat and placed it on the plate before me. She smiled, and then insisted I not be shy and help myself to the sides. Tommy started talking to his parents about some new movie that was coming out that he really wanted to see. He tried to drag me into it a few times, but I really didn't say much. Tommy usually talked all through his dinner, which actually sometimes got really annoying, but on that night, I was ecstatic that he did just that. At least I was not being forced into the conversation all that much. For the remainder of dinner, I tried desperately to convince myself that I was eating roasted pork, as I was told it was. To this day, I'm still not entirely sure what it really was that I consumed that night. But, well, let's just say it probably wasn't pig meat. As soon as dinner was over, I excused myself and waited for Tommy in his room. As soon as he had finished, I told him that I wanted to go home. He looked at me in confusion and begged me to stay a little bit longer, but I told him I really wasn't feeling well and that I'd just see him tomorrow in school. He brought me into his father's upstairs office to use the telephone. When my mom arrived, I asked Tommy to follow me out into the driveway and say goodbye there. I waved goodbye to his mom and dad, I thanked them for dinner, holding back my disgust, and put on my shoes. I hoped his parents wouldn't follow us, and to my delight, they didn't. My mom was waiting in the running car. I don't think I'd ever been so happy to see her smiling face. Before I got to the car, however, I stopped my movement and halted Tommy's as well. I told him that I had to tell him something important. He replied with some childish attempt at humor, but I insisted it was serious. I told him about what I had found in the basement, what had happened, the names on the frozen meat, and my assumptions about his weekly special lunches. Then, Tommy said something that caused the inherent situational dread to rise up and consume me. Tommy told me I couldn't have gotten into the deep freezer because his parents had always kept it locked. Tommy didn't believe me, and now I knew he honestly didn't know. He had never seen the inside of the freezer. He told me his parents always kept it locked because it was the old-style kind of freezer, and a child could become locked inside. My mother beeped and started to grow impatient. I demanded that Tommy check the freezer for himself, and I would talk to him more the following day. Tommy gave me a condescending, yet friendly smile, waved to me as I climbed in the door of my mom's car, and went back inside. My mom made small talk with me, asking me about what we had done, but for the longest time I gave short, one-word answers, until I finally blurted out what had happened. I told her about Tommy's lunches, the packages in the freezer, Tommy's explanation, everything. I thought she'd slam on the brakes in terror, enraged at what had happened to her son, but my mom just chuckled to herself. I sat there in disbelief at first, concerned at her absence of it, as she began to try and convince me that I must have somehow misunderstood and told me she was pretty sure that the Strattons were not cannibals. I knew what I saw, but her levity helped relieve the tension. By the time I had actually gone to bed that night, I had convinced myself that my interpretations of the thing that I had observed must have been false. Sleep came quite easily that night. The following day started out normal at first, except for Tommy's disposition. Tommy had arrived to school in the same clothes that he had worn the day before. His hair was messier than usual, and he seemed quiet, reserved, yet somehow pleased. Due to classroom seating arrangements and my bus's late arrival to the school caused by a long passing train, I really didn't get a chance to talk to him until lunch. We both packed our lunches and sat at our normal table with each other while everyone else stood in line for the lunch lady to fill their trays with the slop du jour. "Hey man, I'm really sorry about last night," I told Tommy. He just looked at me for a second before leaning in close to my face and whispering, "You were right." I didn't know what to say or do. I thought maybe he was playing a joke, but Tommy pulled out a sandwich and an apple from his brown paper bag as he told me the story of the events that occurred after my departure from his home. Tommy told me at first he thought I was nuts, but agreed he thought it was odd that he'd never seen the inside of the deep freezer. He knew where they kept the key, which was in the kitchen drawer, having figured that they had remembered to lock it after I had returned to the table from the basement. Tommy told me he was right, that the freezer was indeed locked, but sneaking down into the kitchen and retrieving the key from the drawer was a simple task after his parents had fallen asleep. He told me that he found the packages of meat, all labeled, several names he remembered from previous school meals. At first he said he was disgusted that his parents could do such a wretched thing. Tommy must have snapped. He told me he retrieved a hammer from his father's garage and bashed his parents' heads in while they slept peacefully in their bed. His mother woke up and screamed once after he initially cracked his father's skull open, but she was quickly silenced with the same fate. My eyes grew wide with fear. Panic began to overtake me. I asked him how he could do it, if he had really done it, what he had done with the bodies. And Tommy just looked at me with a devilish grin as he lifted the sandwich to his mouth, then took a bite. Well, if you're starving for terror, make sure to look where you just never thought you'd find it, your freezer. But if it's not there, you can always return here next Saturday for more gore galore. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.